What am I doing?
You are in.
Am I in? Okay, let me see. I don't see
You
myself
see me?
in yet. I don't see me in yet. Let me see. Where am I? Hold on. Let me see where. Here we go. 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 There you go, my brother.
All right. All right. All right.
Got the Wolf Man on. I look like the Wolf Man.
Yeah. Mine going down here. Yours growing on top there, brother.
Tell you, boy.
Never seen you with a bush before.
1977, bro.
Right. It's back. It's back.
Me and Dr. J. That's all good, bro. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good, man. What we doing today?
All right. Well, let me just begin. This is Michael Rice, aka The Connector, and we are on the New Urban Network. The program today is TheConnectorLive, and this program was put together in order to spotlight the magnificent individuals within our communities who are doing magnificent things. Our guest today is Mr. Earl Harvey, and Mr. Harvey is a promoter, producer, publisher of Black Professional News, and also like a CEO of Earl Harvey Media. He probably got a dozen other things that he does as well. Which you
At least.
Recently, I believe the first time me and Earl met was he was promoting events at the 3801, the National Association of Marketing Developers.
Right.
And he was doing some great things, bringing together business leaders and entrepreneurs, doing business card exchanges and just connecting. And I really admired that. That's something I said. I was doing events and I said, oh, let me do this. Let me bring them in, especially since I was working with various people within the community. So, and then eventually we ended up, just I guess it was just a couple of years ago, we were doing an event together, 7165, Urban Professionals Night Out. And in fact, as one of the results of that is we got a Facebook page, Urban Professionals Night Out. So you want to check in and see what's going on. There's a lot of people as part of that network, especially the events on there. So it's a good place to find out what is going on for mature adult pleasure seekers. So Earl, let me go ahead and welcome you on in here. And why don't we do this? Because I know a lot of people know about your glory, but we want to know about your story. So can we start by just tell us how you got to this point? What brought you here?
Sure. Well, you know, I want to take it back to the very beginning. And I want to thank you for having me today. But when you talk about what got you here, you know, all of us have a story to tell. Everybody's got a story. Everybody has a journey. And it's the parts of that journey as you go along in life that get you to the end result. And thank God I'm still here, still got a few more things. I hope I haven't reached the end of my journey yet, but I'm certainly in the fourth quarter, being 65 years old. So I'm blessed to have had wonderful parents, Martha and Ernest Harvey. I had a very stable childhood. And I grew up in South Philadelphia. I lived next door to the world famous Marian Anderson, worldwide legendary singer and opera singer, opera star, and humanitarian. So that was my first introduction into what the Black community and the impact of Black people on the world, what that looked like. I saw that up close and personal. So we were neighbors for the first 12 years of my life before we moved. But we remained lifelong friends. Our two families, the Andersons and the Harveys, were lifelong friends right up until her death. So as far as getting exposed to the big picture and what civil rights and human rights and the ability of Black people to achieve if given the opportunity, that was instilled in me in a very early life, having such a famous next door neighbor.
Right.
So I was blessed to go to really good schools, you know, all throughout my life. The public school system in Philadelphia at that time was a very stable public school system. It has gone through a lot of changes over the last 40, 50 years, obviously. But coming up in the 60s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, it was a different time and a different space in Philadelphia. And our neighborhood schools at that time You know, for the most part, we're pretty good places to be. My parents were educators. My dad was a teacher.
Okay,
And he
you
taught
have
at
different experience then.
Falk Junior High
Education
School.
for
So
parents.
I had educators in my family. So education
Right.
was a given for us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The fact that it wasn't a matter of if we were going to college, is where we were going to college.
Let
Okay.
me ask you this, Earl, because we're not that much difference in age. Because I know when I came up, I just realized when I was going back through my history that in elementary school, I was part of the civil rights movement. I don't know, the desegregation of Philadelphia schools. Never knew how segregated Philadelphia was coming up until I started researching it.
Absolutely.
But I was bused from all black Cleveland Elementary School to all white Alany Elementary up in the Northeast. And that's the first time I'm really experienced being outside the neighborhood and seeing those things. Do you have any kind of experience like that coming up?
Well, the schools I went to were mixed schools anyway. So I lived in South Philadelphia, but I had access to my elementary school was actually Albert M. Greenfield now. And Albert M. Greenfield was always one of the better elementary schools in the city of Philadelphia. It was called City Center back then in the 60s, but it matriculated into Albert M. Greenfield. And for those of you all who know the reputation of Albert M. Greenfield School, you know the kind of quality education you get. So I was exposed to going to school with kids from all different cultures at a very early age. And that has enabled me to be comfortable all throughout my life in dealing with everybody, you know? So I was blessed in that regard. And like you said, the 60s were a very turbulent time. We came through the civil rights movement. And, you know, we lived through the, obviously the Vietnam War. We came through some pretty traumatic times just being educated in Philadelphia. And we learned a lot about the nation as a whole because those times were just so incredible in terms of the history of this country. So all that life experience is what gets you to where you are today. And that enabled me to go to college at Temple University and major in communications, radio, television, and film, and journalism. Okay.
There you go.
And I was able to really get the kind of education that propelled me into a career and not just a job. See, so I was able to graduate from Temple University, and at that point, I was either able to work for any of the major media companies or newspapers if I chose to do that, or because of the background and the training that I had, it enabled me to start my own business. And that was the beginning of Earl Harvey Media, Earl Harvey Enterprises in the mid 80s. I saw the opportunity to get in business for myself and not have to answer to anybody, not have to have a boss or a supervisor or any of that stuff. I wanted to do a different route.
Is there anyone or anything that, I mean, because you sound like you're talking about why you're here, right? Is there anything or one incident or story that you can share that made you say, shoot, I know what I'm gonna do?
I wouldn't say one thing. What I will say is you can't undervalue education because education gives you options. And when you see what the options are and you have prepared yourself for the options, then that gives you more, it gives you a bigger picture about what your possibilities are.
True.
And
Malcolm X said that education is the passport to the future.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so critical for our young people. And for those of us who are older, we just constantly encourage our young people to finish school, get an education, excel in school. Don't be ordinary, be extraordinary. Okay? We know that the educational system in our country is geared against people of color. We understand that. But we also want to encourage our young people that if given the opportunity, it's up to you to want to excel too. Okay? No matter what you consider as an obstacle or something holding you back, there's always a way, but you have to want the way. And so my education is probably the most important thing, Michael, that gave me the opportunity to realize that I had options and I chose self-employment as my option.
Do you have any mentors?
Well, when you start off life living next door to Marion Anderson, you know, you can't go wrong there. Okay.
That's true. That's true.
That's number
That's
one.
true.
And of course, I was blessed to have a father who also finished college. My father was the first Black professional, one of the first Black professionals in Philadelphia to work for corporate America. He was the first African American hired by a Fortune 500 company, which was Sunoco in 1965. Okay. And he broke the color line of corporate America in Philadelphia. So my dad was an initial role model because he showed me that corporate America ain't nothing but something to get in and do, okay? Not something to be afraid of. And because I saw how he approached corporate America, working in corporate America, and how he navigated that, I didn't have a problem starting my own business because I was experienced in how corporate America worked. And that's because I was able to see that through the lens of my dad. Okay. So I was blessed to have some real role models in my life who let me know what the possibilities were as well, because they were doing it by example. Okay. And they said that if they could do it, certainly I could do it. And that's the path I chose. Okay.
Would you say, can you identify any challenges or obstacles that you ran into that you had to overcome?
Well, you know, it's not until you get in, then you realize where you fit in. Okay, we've heard that phrase a million times. It wasn't until I started a business and had to encounter what it takes to start a business, run a business, manage a business. And my initial business was a modeling and talent agency in Philadelphia in 1985.
Man, you got so much history, the same parallel path, bro.
There were, at the time I started my agency, there was only one Black modeling agency in Philadelphia in in the country in 1985, one in the entire country. And that was Grace Del Marco Models in New York. And I had noticed over the years, because I was in mass media in college, I always paid attention to advertising and images and commercials and how African Americans were depicted in those scenarios. Also, because I took communications in school, I understood the film industry, and I understood mass media and journalism. And I was taught and showed examples of how Black people's images have been portrayed from slavery up until modern times. So I was trained and taught and learned about mass media before I started my business, which is what enabled me to start my business. So when I had the opportunity to purchase a modeling agency with a friend of mine, she owned the business. I partnered with her. I invested in her business. And our mission was to get our models exposure in the advertising and television and film and media industry. That was our job. And at that time, we had, of course, Ebony Magazine and Jet Magazine and all the big major magazines, Essence, all the big major magazines were on the marketplace. If you looked at a lot of the advertising for Black hair, advertising for entertainment, fast food like McDonald's and Coca-Cola,
right?
All those companies use Black people in their images, in their media, in their commercials. So the mid 80s was
about the 70s and the 80s when the push was on.
Yes, you have to look no further than the impact of Soul Train on the culture of Philadelphia to understand what Black television advertising and marketing could look like.
Didn't they? What was the I guess the white version of that? Wasn't it?
Soul Train?
American Bandstand.
American Bandstand, absolutely. American Bandstand was the version. Soul Train became the Black version of American Bandstand. Okay, because American Bandstand came first. But if you remember the commercials on Soul Train, a lot of them were for Black hair products.
Right.
Afro Sheen, okay? Dudley, Pink Lady, okay?
Everybody had them perfect bushes too, right?
Hey, all those products were geared for our community. The early McDonald's commercials and Coca-Cola commercials, if you look back in the day, those were some of the major companies, particularly Coca-Cola and Pepsi, that broke the color line in using Black models and Black actors and musicians in their commercials?
We talked about, I was interviewing some other people, and we were talking about, at that same time, Reverend Leon Sullivan, Progress Plaza, and he came up with selective patronage. And he was one of the ones that turned around Coca-Cola, because Coca-Cola wasn't hiring at first, and he turned it around with selective patronage. Then he took that same thing and went to South Africa, and Coca-Cola was over there doing the same stuff, and he changed it around. So
this was an opportunity at that time. If you look at the 60s and the 70s, this was a time when the Black community was emerging. We had come back from World War II, and our Black soldiers were coming back, and after having served their country, they wanted more when they came home because of how they were treated in the service.
Right.
And they wanted the same opportunities that their white counterparts and veterans had when they came home, meaning that they wanted a good job, they wanted to raise their family in a quality environment, they wanted good housing, they wanted good schools, they wanted all the things that everybody else was entitled to because they fought for their country.
The Black middle class, that's how I think it was established through there.
It was established
one of the things,
after
because
World
of the war, they got the GI Bill, which gave them housing.
Right, right. All
so
your
they purchased the housing, and that changed the game.
And they were allowed to have college reimbursement.
Exactly.
Tuition remission. My father would join the service so he could go to college. Okay.
So did I.
Yeah. So I mean, there was a definite movement to the middle class that came out of the civil rights and the World War II experience. And our families, because of the age that we are, our families lived that and experienced that. And my father and parents, their mission was to establish the American dream for our family. And that's what they chose to do. And ironically, you mentioned Progress Plaza. When my father had the opportunity to buy a home for us in North Philadelphia, it was in the Yorktown section of Philadelphia, which was brand new townhomes down by Temple University, fully air conditioned. And who ever heard of air conditioning in 1965, brother? Okay.
Right.
We had a fully air conditioned house in 1965, bro. Okay.
We huddled around the fan, one fan.
We actually had the air on. Okay. We called it the air. Okay.
The air was open up the window, right?
Boy, look here, boy. We had it made in North Philadelphia. You live in North Philly? I said, yeah, we got central air. Central air. What is that? So we were there when Reverend Leon Sullivan broke ground for Progress Plaza. And that was one of the first examples of Black power, you know, Black economic power, because his church members raised the money through their 1036 plan to develop Progress Plaza.
1036 plan.
They did that for themselves, brother. And Reverend Sullivan said, if we can do this for ourselves here in Philadelphia, we can do this for ourselves all around the world. And he used his model. That was the model. He used his platform of economic empowerment to make a lifelong change and condition for Black people in this country. And that's a model that we need to really get back to today.
Right. Well, that's what we're trying to get back to. But let me ask you this, because I know that you're dealing with it, that you're like in the center of Black business in Philadelphia and New Jersey in terms of building those relationships. So the term urban professional, what does that mean to you?
Well, my father was the first urban professional. He was the first African-American to work for a Fortune 500 company in the city of Philadelphia. And when he opened that door, other Black professionals came in behind them. He broke the color line. And then other major institutions like Girard Bank at that time, PSFS, you know, there were other major companies in Philadelphia, Bell Telephone, we all remember them, okay? There were other major companies in Philadelphia that had not allowed Blacks to move into executive positions. And when my father did, they all started opening up. And it was because of a national policy called affirmative action that was instituted in the 60s, which was the first diversity program in this country, where the leaders in the country realized that it was time to open up the doors of America on a corporate and professional level and include African Americans. And believe me, at that time, as you remember, we were the only minority in Philadelphia, in the country, actually. It wasn't like there was a whole lot of diversity. The Latinos hadn't made their move yet.
Right.
So at one point, when you said minority, that meant Black people, okay? So that first wave of generations of African Americans that went into corporate America in the early 60s and the 70s, they were the first Black professionals. And if you look at their history, because a lot of those individuals were not allowed to join the other white mainstream organizations that represented those occupations, in other words, life insurance, if you look at Black doctors and Black dentists, Black lawyers, back then, they were not allowed to join the white organizations of that trade. Black people couldn't join the AMA, the American Medical Association. They couldn't join the ADA, American Dental Association. They couldn't join them because of racism. So those Black professionals had to start their own. And some of those organizations are still around today. We still have the Black Doctors Association, okay? We still have the Black Dentists Association, and we have the Black Lawyers Association. We have the Black, every profession you can name had its own association. Because of racism, we were not allowed to be professionals within that organization. We
found opportunities within the adversity. That's interesting that you say that, because I was just looking at a piece on the Negro League, which Octavius Cato was instrumental in bringing that to our city. But that situation, in terms of dealing with that challenge here in Philadelphia, let me ask you this, what kind of strategies first, what kind of challenges have you ran into? Because I know you're in the center of this Black movement. And what kind of challenges are you facing, and what kind of strategies have you come up with to overcome those challenges?
Well, my original challenge when I started my business was that I was trying to get Black faces in white corporate commercials. And that was the first time I realized, wow, man, the racism in the radio, film, media, I mean, it is so unbelievable. And I was in my mid-20s. And that was the first obstacle I had, was the resistance of white corporate America to use Black people in their marketing and advertising. And I had to understand what the game was. And that's when I learned that in addition to some of the major white advertising agencies that were out there, and I'm talking some of the biggest advertising agencies in the world, there were a handful of Black advertising agencies that were out there too. And when I would go knock on the door to try to promote my models and the talent that I had, they would tell me, you're in the wrong place. You need to go see the Black agency. And Coca-Cola would tell me who their Black agency was. And Pepsi would tell me who their Black agency was. And McDonald's would tell me who their Black agency was. So I couldn't just knock on the door of McDonald's Corporation. When I knocked on the door, they said, hello, you're in the wrong place.
You said, you got to go to the other door.
You got to go down the other. So that's what I said. Wow, man, it's like this. But there was so much money in advertising back then that even the Black ad agencies that were out there, they were doing multi-millions of dollars worth of work. Okay, you have to look at the commercials on Soul Train back in the day, an old Pepsi or Coca-Cola commercial on Soul Train, and realize these commercials were being shown nationwide.
Yeah.
Soul Train was a
like
national.
Brothers, Robert Johnson.
Right.
John H. Johnson, all them guys. Yeah.
Ebony Magazine was a national publication. They owned Jet Magazine.
Right.
And back then, if you looked at all the advertising that was in Ebony, a lot of that came from companies like Ford Motor Company, General Motors, cigarette
companies. What's funny about that, what you just said, was the original Ebony was tan, right? What's called tan. And we went from tan to Ebony.
That's right. Yeah, and John Johnson had to go to corporate America and tell them, you all are missing the boat by not advertising to Black people.
Right.
Black people have a whole lot of money and you all are letting racism interfere with your bottom line.
No, there's an interesting video that I would advise any viewers to check out. And it was made in the 1950s. It's called How to Sell to Black People.
How to sell to the
How
Negro.
to sell to the Negro.
How to sell to the Negro. And John Johnson from Ebony made that video.
Mm-hmm.
John Johnson paid for that video because he wanted to put something together to show corporate America the value of the Black consumer. He had to use that. He had to use that film just to get into the door.
Right. And in that film, they were saying that Black people pay their bills on time because they have this new wealth, because we've become a growing middle class. We wanted the quality items. They even said, if you go into a store, show them the designer items, show them the expensive stuff, because they don't want the cheap stuff. They want to say, is this the best? No, they wanted the best. So you try to say, this is a little bit cheaper. They were like, no, no, no. He says, and because of years and years not being denied, they wanted it. So that was a great time. That was a great time for Black people.
Absolutely.
Right? They had some money. Right. They had some options.
And he was showing them that there's an emerging Black middle class that you guys are missing. And it's an opportunity for you all to increase your sales and your bottom line. And with corporate America, when you tell them they're going to make more money and you show them how to make more money, then you get their attention. Okay.
Exactly.
And he knew he had to do that because him just knocking on the door, trying to have a conversation about it, wasn't getting him anywhere. He knew he had to back that up with a film to show them what they were missing, And that's the power of media.
In the meantime, because you hear a lot of people talking about Black Wall Street. Now, Black Wall Street was like 1920s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. But at the same time, understanding was like Durham, North Carolina had a Black Wall Street. Like, it wasn't just one. There were Black Wall Streets all over where we had business communities because due to segregation. Once again, adversity, opportunity. We make a point right now that we're in adversity right now. There's opportunity in this adversity.
Yeah. So I use my position as a qualified Black company. I consider myself qualified at the time. And I had the same mission that John Johnson had. I had to show corporate America that you could use Black talent and increase your sales and bottom line. So I was in the fight with them. But what you just mentioned about Black people supporting their own was also something that I realized at that time. Because while I was beating myself, up, man, trying to get work from corporate America, I looked around and said, well, if I can't get work from corporate America, what other opportunities exist for me to do work with my own people? Okay, maybe I need to shift my strategy a little bit. And that's when I started looking at all the other Black people that were in media and entertainment and fashion. And I said, well, let me look at that as an area of growth for me too. And that's what I hooked up with NAFAD at the time, National Association of Fashion and Accessory Designers. And I met all these wonderful people that were designing clothes. And I said, let me hook up with these people and maybe they can use my models for fashion shows. And next thing you knew, I had segued into a whole nother segment that originally I hadn't quite jumped on. And we started working with Black designers, man, doing shows. And we started looking at that time in the mid 80s, the music video category was really exploding. And we went to a lot of the record companies and a lot of the private labels that were hiring Black models to do videos. And we started exposing our talent in that market as well. So we started finding other ways to grow our business by working with people of color, people that look like us. And that's when I really got on my platform about supporting Black-owned businesses. I said, because we don't have to always be begging corporate America for money, for pennies that they're not going to give us. Let's find ways that we can work together to support each other. And we can grow our businesses and our community that way also. And that's been I adopted my platform of supporting Black-owned businesses and networking. And that's what carried me through to today.
It's interesting because during that time, when you say that, I realized, I was also doing entertainment showcases at a modeling group and a dance group. And then now when I think about it, I said, we went to Chitlin Circuit. So we were at Cafe d'Elegance, Hollywood Palace, Impulse, Whispers. I mean, we hit all the spots.
Right.
New Tech, all the floors,
Right.
all that. But we were supporting. I mean, so there is, I guess, wherever we go, there's always that niche that we have that we can fill. We just got to value it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the older you get, the more you realize that it's not just an opportunity, it's a mission.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mission. It's the way to create jobs in our community. It's a way to establish long-term relationships with our community. It's an opportunity to do business with our community, because we have enough money and enough capital and enough intellectual capital in our community to do anything we want.
Exactly.
We don't really have to ask corporate America or white America for anything. And the Black Wall Street model showed us that.
Mm-hmm.
Before integration, when we were only allowed to spend our money with each other, we had thriving, multi-millionaire communities, brother. Okay, yeah. That was the example. Now, after integration, in the civil rights movement, when we were allowed to spend our money with everybody, we sat in at the lunch counters and we did all the protests. We did all that because we did deserve the right to eat at Woolworths. We did deserve the right to go to whatever school we want to go to. We did deserve the right to live where we want to live. We earned that right as Americans.
Mm-hmm.
However, the sad part is, once we got our rights, we ran with that and never came back to our roots.
That's right.
And our roots is what really got us where we should have been. But we let our rights carry us away from that mission. And we really need to look at that model now and get back to that.
That's true. That's true. I know in terms of the Negro Leagues, right? We had the best. I mean, Willie Mays and all kind of guys that were part of the Negro Leagues, when they opened it up, when Jackie Robinson opened that door up, it was detrimental to black baseball players, because now they started moving over and they had the choice. They could pick the choice ones, and then they discarded. So we had like 3 different leagues. Right. And all of them went defunct as a result of integration.
Right. And the thing about what you just said is that, when you have any kind of a major national operation, that creates jobs and employment on so many different levels that when that infrastructure breaks down, all that goes away. Meaning that at that time, the black ball players were only allowed to stay in black hotels.
Mm-hmm.
So that means whatever city they win, that black hotel was probably almost sold out that night, and they made money.
Mm-hmm.
The black restaurants could only serve those players, which means you brought in 40, 50 people coming into a restaurant at one time.
Right.
Okay? You were only allowed to use black transportation companies, black bus companies, black cab companies. You couldn't use anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So now we had
the fact is we had black cab companies and bus companies and
even the stadiums they rented out. They would have to rent a stadium, but then they would sell the concessions. Okay. Mm-hmm. And there had to be a promoter in each city to promote the games, right? There had to be a black newspaper in the city to put the ad in for the games,
mm-hmm.
right? So we see this whole ecosystem that develops around black business. And the minute that integration took our black athletes out of our black leagues, those black leagues folded, and all the other supply and vendors that supported that whole concept went away with them.
It's interesting that during that time of segregation, we really valued black establishment. We really valued the opportunity they represented. And the minute integration came, I think with integration also came with a strategy to devalue black-owned businesses, right, in preference to other-owned businesses.
And we bought into that. That was our fault.
Right. And we continue to do that.
We continue to do it. The minute that we were allowed to eat at Woolworths, we stopped eating at Miss Sadie's.
Mm-hmm.
And Miss Sadie been feeding the community for 50 years.
Right.
She gave everybody their first job.
Mm-hmm.
When you didn't have no money, Miss Sadie would say, give me that $2 next Friday when you get paid.
That's right.
Will Woolworths give you a meal and tell you next Friday come back and you can pay me?
You're lucky to be able to sit down at the counter, right?
No way in this world. And don't you know, Michael Rice, you used to eat at Woolworth's, brother.
Man, that was a highlight.
Was Woolworth's food as good as Miss Sadie's?
No,
No way. No way.
No way.
That burger and fries and Coca-Cola couldn't touch Miss Sadie's smothered chicken, macaroni and cheese and greens.
They made good Sundays, though.
Okay, they made good Sundays, right? So we bought into that, man, and we the ones that put Miss Sadie out of business.
True.
Okay, so that was our fault.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true. Let me ask you this though, Earl. And I always, I mean, when I talk about you, I'm talking about one of the master networkers in the city.
Thank you.
Right. And I know that you have refined this skill. Can you just share how you have taken your networking skill and utilized it in order to create a positive outcome?
Well, Mike, the basis of networking is very simple. It's really, number one, about communication.
Mm-hmm.
Your ability to talk to and communicate your ideas, your values, yourself, your business to other people. And to do it in a way that they can appreciate and embrace it and not reject it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically, number one, about how do you get along with people? Okay, very simple.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, when you personally introduce yourself to someone else and you enter their space, that's a personal connection.
Right.
And advertising and marketing tries to do that with commercials. They run the commercials over and over and over and over and over. So you start singing the song of the commercial, whether you like it or not.
Exactly.
Okay? But they do it through repetition. They'll make you buy a product only because you saw it advertised 100 times. You say, this must be good.
Right.
I gotta try this.
I can tell you the ingredients to a Big Mac.
Right, exactly. They have you running to get it.
Right.
But the reality is, personal networking is a one-to-one relationship. And when you speak to somebody one-to-one, okay, and you're looking in their eye, and you're shaking their hand, and you're introducing yourself, that's a whole different experience. And that interpersonal communication, the ability to do that effectively is what separates a networker, okay, from an effective networker. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I tell people all the time, you can go to business card exchanges and you can collect all the cards in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just collecting business cards and not connecting with people with the business cards, it's a meaningless transaction.
Exactly.
So the value that I've been able to build from networking is that, first of all, I'm sincere with people, I connect with people, and I'm genuinely interested in what they have to say. And the average person, when they approach someone on a networking vibe, they approach them seeing what they can get from the person.
Exactly.
I approach them seeing what I can give to the person.
That's right.
And when people realize that you're a giver and not a taker, they respond to you a whole different way.
Right. And especially if you come in with the whole concept of, I want to have a mutually beneficial relationship. Right. It's not about you taking from me or me taking from you. It's about us sharing in a relationship. And it's about a relationship, building a relationship.
Absolutely. And that's the value. That's why I've been able to have a successful network. I have the largest personal network in Philadelphia. As you know, I've been establishing my network over 25 years. Mm-hmm. So it's not just that I have built the network, I have maintained the network over 25 years. And that's the real challenge, because the value proposition is, what do people see in you and your mission, your platform, your product or your service? What can they see in that they want to have a long-term relationship with, and not just a one-off experience? And that's what I've been able to do, is deliver value with my product and service, in addition to having a quality product and service that people want to use over and over.
So tell me about, let's talk about your current initiatives, what you're doing. Tell me.
Yes. Yeah, I'm the publisher of the Black Professionals News in Philadelphia, and I'm the publisher of the AC Times in Atlantic City. excuse my props here. This is my Atlantic City paper, the AC Times. I started there 5 years ago when I moved to Atlantic City. I saw the opportunity to put a newspaper on the street because they didn't have a community paper. And I'm an entrepreneur and I'm an opportunist. And I'm good at doing newspapers. So I said, let me put my paper on the street and see how can I serve the community with my media. And here's my Philadelphia paper, BPN, the Black Professionals News. I like this shot. There you go.
That's a good shot.
That'd be my new selfie. And this paper's been in Philadelphia for 20 years now. And this was the paper that I established when I established my networking platform. Right. BPN, the Black Professionals News, BPN, the Black Professionals Network. I was able to use my brand in multiple ways to establish my business.
Okay. So I know that you're also working on organizing Black business here in Philadelphia. There's a big initiative. Tell us about the IBUYBLACK.
Sure, absolutely. When I established my newspaper, Mike, around the year 2000, the purpose of my paper was, at that time, I didn't see any other newspapers or any other media outlets that focused on Black-owned businesses and Black professionals. This was a time when my friends were coming out of college in the 70s and the 80s, and a lot of people we knew were entering corporate America. And they were the emerging Black professionals. And they were huge numbers, okay? This was a great time in America for Black employment for young people coming out of college, okay? So I saw that market was not being served in the media. And since I have a media background, I understood how media works. And I said to myself, there's an opportunity to serve those people who are coming out as professionals and starting their own businesses in many cases. And there was not a publication that spoke to them. So basically, I wanted to create the Black enterprise of Philadelphia. I saw an opportunity to use the Black Enterprise magazine as my model, my format, to reach professionals and business owners and speak to them. And I mirrored my paper after that. I made sure that my paper had information about how to start a business, how to grow a business, how to find financing, how to get professional training, okay? I created my own vehicle to service that market. And that's what being an entrepreneur is all about. You find an idea or you create something that is not being done, you claim that space, you perfect that space, you own that space, and you become the expert in that space. And that's what I've been able to do for the last 20 years. I've been able to maintain it. And by developing my newspaper, I gave myself an outlet to put all the information about networking and business development and professional development in one place. So people could pick it up and realize that when they opened the pages of my newspaper, they were going to find things they couldn't find anywhere else.
Right.
And the key was to determine how successful I was when people would tell me, oh yeah, Mr. Harvey, I picked up a copy of your paper. I like your paper. I said, really? I said, when did you pick it up? Where'd you get it? I picked it up 3 years ago. And guess what, Mr. Harvey? I still have it.
Right.
I said, wait a minute. You know, you read the Inquirer, the Daily News, they're in the recycle bin the next day.
Right, okay? Right. This is 911.
Right. They put it down for the doggy box, okay? Using it for kitty litter. And people would tell me they held on to my paper for several years because there was so much information in there, they didn't want to get rid of it. So I knew I had to.
There are on my wall. There are newspapers on my wall. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Thank you, brother. That's when you know that you're making a connection with your people. When they find that kind of value in what you're doing, then you know that you've hit the right note. People tell me all the time, they'll walk up to me on the street and say, I don't even know who they are. Hey, Mr. Harvey, you got a paper? And I'll start smiling. You know, every time I see you, you got a paper.
Right. You're proud
you always got a paper.
You got to be proud of that.
So I've had a very rewarding experience being able to serve my community. It has been a blessing for me. And Michael, you're a public servant. You work with nonprofits all the time. When you know you're making a difference in the community, when you know you're resonating with people, and people can see tangible outcomes from being in business with you or just knowing you, then you know your mission is being fulfilled, and it's very satisfying.
I always look at it like when I'm listening to them, when they go from what you gonna do to what we gonna do. When they start saying we, you know, oh, that we're in it together. So I'm not gonna keep you too long.
Okay.
The last thing, you know, my audience is young folks. You know, I deal with youth leaders, and I deal with community activists and people within the community, and also aspiring business people. So, what message you have them? Some tips for success in these trying times, in the post-corona time.
Well, you know, the major tip that I'd like to give everybody is believe in yourself. Okay. There's always going to be obstacles in life. Everybody doesn't have a perfect story. There's no such thing. But if you commit yourself to excellence, you commit yourself to education and knowledge, you commit yourself to faith and family, commit yourself to community, okay? These are the things that will keep you grounded in good times and in bad times. And there's no substitute for hard work.
Right.
You can't run from hard work if you want to be successful. If you had the opportunity to watch the Michael Jordan series the last few weeks on ESPN, the one takeaway from the Michael Jordan story was how hard he worked and how hard he pushed people, and him settling for nothing less than excellence and nothing less than perfection for himself and others around him. Now, everybody can't be like Mike,
right.
Okay? And Mike wasn't a perfect person. Even he admits that. But just the example that he gave, that there was no substitute for hard work, is one that we can use as an example if we want to be successful in this country. And there are other people who've been exceptional at what they do. And we've been blessed to be in Philadelphia to have some of the wonderful sports role models that we have had in Philadelphia. Okay, we use them as examples of hard work and excellence.
Right.
But just look around. There are other people in your community that aren't athletes. They're not rappers. They're not entertainers. But they're still successful in life.
Right.
It could be the guy that picks up your trash every day, who's making $60,000 a year and has a nice car and has his kids in school and has a nice house in a nice neighborhood. It could be your school teachers that you see. It could be your faith-based leaders that you see, okay? It could be the policemen and the firemen that you see. It doesn't have to be an athlete or entertainer. So if you look around your community, there are examples of people who are doing well all over you, okay? Don't go for the flash and don't for the cash and the cash. Go for style, absolutely, but more importantly, go for substance. And those things will carry you in life a whole lot further than the here today and come tomorrow lifestyle that they show on television.
Actually, I'm going to send you, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I did a video based upon my book, Be Magnificent, Exceed Your Expectations, and on vision. And it highlighted Reverend Leon Sullivan, right? Natasha Harris, Robert Hall, who amongst men. Natasha Harris is Broken Wings, Dorothy Spike Johnson,
Right.
Mothers in Charge.
Absolutely.
I mean, Kenyatta Johnson became state rep, then council person. I'm saying I just ran that through in the book, so you know, you're surrounded. I always believe that success is proximity.
That's
so I never hate on anybody who's being successful because I was like, I'm in the room with them. I'm in the room where success is at. That means I'm getting closer and closer to what I want. You know?
Absolutely, Mike. Success is all around you. You have to embrace it. Okay? Ain't nobody gonna hand you nothing out here.
That's right.
There's no substitute for hard work. And I want our young people to really understand that. There's no shortcuts in life.
Right.
Okay? You get out of life what you put in. And nobody owes you anything, brother.
Right.
Not a
I
thing
know I was
in
talking
this
to Dr. Leslie Grace, and she said that her grandmother used to say, ain't nobody coming for you.
That's right.
Nobody coming for you, so you better take care of yourself, right?
That's right, brother. That's right.
Right, right. So let's get put out some contact information. Somebody want to get a hold of you.
Sure.
Get a hold of the paper. What is
Yeah. As you mentioned, Mike, we're working on a campaign to support our Black-owned businesses post-COVID. We know that our businesses are going to suffer coming out of this pandemic. Black-owned businesses always suffer when there's an economic downturn. So we're trying to support the Black-owned community with an initiative we call I Buy Black, which encourages people to support Black-owned businesses. We have a website, IBUYBLACK.org. If people are looking for qualified Black-owned businesses, we have them in our directory. And we also encourage people to purchase our I Buy Black card, which makes you a member of the I Buy Black Club and entitles you to discounts and services throughout the Black business community. My phone number, area code 267-244-3860, 267-244-3860. My website is earlharvey.com, and you can find me on Facebook, earlharvey.50 at facebook.com.
All right, and if you didn't get all that, just Google this guy. He'll pop right up at the top.
Thank you, Mike, for having me today. I appreciate you having me today. I appreciate talking to your listeners and the folks that are in your network. And anything I can do to help you, brother, what you're trying to do, don't hesitate to ask.
No, well, I appreciate you, brother. And as always, I always end with just this one closing statement. Always. Well, this is Michael Rice, aka The Connector, along with Earl Harvey, Black Professional News, saying always exceed your expectations. Be magnificent.
Peace.
Peace. All right. Thank you, man.